2018 on UNESCO MGIP Director, Professor Anantha Duraiappah, to enlighten us with his tech talk. The topic for his talk is Predators and Nurturers. Anantha has spent over 33 years as a science policy trendsetter. He took the position as the inaugural director of UNESCO MGIP in 2014 and has played a pivotal role in positioning the institute as one of the leading research institutes for education. He firmly believes in the power of science and brings in the latest researches from the discipline for building peaceful and sustainable societies. He is a fellow of TWAS and a fellow of World Academy of Arts and Sciences. Ladies and gentlemen, with a huge round of applause, please welcome UNESCO MGIP Director, Anantha Duraiappah.
All right, everybody can hear me. I always would have liked to have met Nandini much earlier in my life because she diagnosed me with dyslexia about a year and a half ago. And I could have explained to my parents why I was. And I would have not had all that scolding for doing poorly in maths and all the other stuff. But the good thing is I found the right options. I was provided certain tools that I was able to get to where I am right now. And then she did another thing which I wasn't too happy about. She told my wife that this is hereditary, and that explains why my son was diagnosed with acute dyslexia very early on. Mine is only about 10 to 15%, but he's in the extreme case. And so immediately the wife said, figures why he's had that. It's the father as usual. But today, I want to focus the talk on a stakeholder that we have pretty much ignored in our discussions. We take the stakeholder for granted. We take this stakeholder to somebody who we think is the best for them. And that stakeholder I'm talking about is the student. Across the whole range of age, but I want to focus on the child. And we are all parents. Today's talk was inspired by my own experience in school, but really going into this field, and I excuse myself, I apologize that I was trained as an economist, but I moved into education after seeing what my children have gone through, which seems to be very similar to what I've gone through. It has not changed. So we need to really look and keep them at the heart of our discussions over the next 3 days. Let's not forget the child. And so, that's a scary photo. Let me get that one out. That's what I do for my hobby. This is not working. So, as they get the technology done, it always happens in a technology conference. The technology doesn't work. But some recent statistics that came out from WHO are very disturbing. The trend, and the Honorable Minister Javadekar Prakash had already alluded, the CM also has suggested of a happiness society. That's his goal. For India, and I was really shocked that 25% of children between the ages of 13 and 15 have some form of depression. And these are the only reported ones. And we know many of us have this as a stigma, so we don't report that. So the real numbers could be much higher. And, of course, everybody knows suicides are something that we really have to contend on. That's been increasing as well. The second disturbing trend is this whole notion of this rising sense of intolerance. We are not willing to listen to the other. And you can see this happening around the world. The whole option of to agree to disagree is not there. And I don't like tolerance. I don't think we should go for tolerance. Tolerance is I'm just tolerating you, and that's been bound by maybe the institutions that are bound us. It is about understanding and respect, and that's where we really need to focus on. Then the third, it's working. We have some really global wicked problems, climate change, migration. These are problems that we are going to be passing on to the future generations to handle, especially climate change. We caused it, now we're going to give them the problem. And they need the kind of tools to handle that. We haven't handled it very well. And then the fourth one, which is really problematic, is how education is becoming a private good. It should be a social good. As an economist, I couldn't put public good because education does not fit within the definitions of what a public good is. So I use social. But it has to be a social good. It is something that we have to offer to every. And SDG 4 talks about it, inclusive, equitable, quality education for all. So it's there. How do we do it? Now I want to talk a little bit about, this is just sort of kind of, I had peanuts in my hands. I was thinking I could have peanuts while I talk, but I don't think I'm going to be able to do that. But these are some of the things that came out from our 2015 Youth Speak survey that we did, global. And this is to support that second, the rising level of intolerance, understanding. Some of them are quite scary. Fixed gender roles for men bring stability to society. In times of insecurity, you need to use force. This is the trend that we are seeing today. So the two main lessons, what we did was we did education for peace and sustainable. That's our mandate. What we find is that what we have right now is not working. It has had very little impact. Because most of those respondents actually said they have had some exposure to education for sustainable development, education for peace, education for human rights, and yet all the responses went orthogonal to what they should have been taught. Now, the good news is that they are empathetic by nature. The neuroscientists here will already have something sparkling in their heads because they know where I'm going towards with this. But we are empathetic by nature, so there is hope. The bad news, so I'm going to go bad news, good news, bad news, good news. The bad news is our education system. This regimented and instrumentalist by nature was a result of a one-year review that the MGIP took of 22 countries in the Asia-Pacific region. And the final result that became is that most of the policies, curriculums, and teacher training, all three, basically reduce it to a regimented and instrumentalist by nature. So don't question rote memorization. How many of the children are here? They will all sort of say, hey, that makes sense. Material wealth and prosperity as a key goal. Education is static. It doesn't really move. It has to be dynamic. It has to have feedbacks. It doesn't. One size fits all. Competitive pitching against each other. I remember when I used to bring my report card, the first thing, so I'm very happy. I said, hey, I got 80% in my maths. I'm just pulling a fast one. It was much lower, but I don't want to tell you what that was. So I had 80% in my maths. And the first thing my mother asked me is, so who was the highest? So it's about pitching against each other. So it's like you got to get, instead of saying, hey, I had 40% in the previous exam, I got now 80%, I've improved. But that was not the objective. So it kind of creates that inner person in there to compete against the other. And I'm going to shock you with a statement later on. And then the standard assessments, exams, exams, exams. The fact that you have an exam has already defeated you because you're so anxious before the exam that you don't have this peace of mind to go in there and do what you need to do. Is this exam mentality is causing us so much of stress. It's actually one of the primary factors for that depression and anxiety. And teachers know it all. I think the Chief Minister alluded to that one earlier in his speech. The kids, while the teacher is saying something, the kids are already Googling it and sort of saying, hey, that's wrong. Right? And then they sort of say, you just said something which is wrong. And if you get a so-called traditional teacher, you have to duck the chalkboard that comes at you. But I think these days that's illegal. But during my days, yes, it was. So I want you to sort of look at this very carefully because the objective is human capital and human flourishing as an externality. And so when you see a lot of this focus on emotional intelligence today, which has been pushed by a lot of companies, corporations, World Economic Forum, the focus is still on human capital. But hopefully by this socio-emotional learning, you increase productivity of that person. And it still doesn't address the issue of depression that we talked about, that I alluded earlier. So the reality is that externality is negative. It actually creates predatorial qualities. So this statement that I've made a couple of times and I still stand by it, that our education system is one of the best predatorial training camps that we have. It creates this to do better than the other one. It's always a competitive spirit. So we need a new approach, one based on science and evidence. And we had yesterday a discussion at the high-level policy forum, and I was happy to see that many of the members there, delegations from countries as well as experts, agreed to sort of say that many of the present dominant education systems are not supported by the best findings from the neurosciences. The good news is there's hope, but we need to train the brain. It doesn't come naturally. We got to, as I said, we are empathetic by nature, but you got to train those neurons. They're sitting there. Don't use it, you lose it. So you got to train. At MGIP, we call it firing the Gandhi neurons. We wish we had coined the word, but it was actually termed by the neuroscientist at UC San Diego, if I'm not mistaken, V.C. Ramachandran, the neuroscientist, the phantom limbs neuroscientist. He called it Gandhi neurons. We think we should call it firing Gandhi neurons because you need to create the circuits, and it's just not a single neuron. So that's what we're creating, those neural circuits between the thinking brain and the emotional brain. So we have the science. This is not so much of speculation. We have the science. We still need to do more work, but then scientists always want to do more work. I think we have enough to start that process. So the facts, the brain is key to learning. Well, that's no-brainer. I wanted a laugh there. I thought it was The brain is a social brain because it has a rational, but it also has an emotional. We have kind of pushed that emotional part away. We're just so focused on building that rational part. And then the whole rationality has been dumped because I'm not sure how many of you read that book, Predictably Irrational, by Dan Ariely. We are not rational. And the reason we are not rational is because of that emotional. It plays a huge role in our decision-making and the way we behave. And then third thing is neuroplasticity is key. It's that whole connections. And the good news is old people like me still have neuroplasticity. So there is hope. The young ones are much more elastic. The older ones are less, but it's not gone. So we can train. And the word you're keeping here is training that brain, linking that emotional to the rational. So this is, as a scientist, I had to keep this hypothesis and the propositions. So the hypothesis is emotionally, this is what we want. An emotionally resilient person is a person who is high well-being, and the externality is a productive individual. So I flipped it. I'm no longer focusing on the human as a productive. I'm looking at the human as a flourishing person with productivity as an externality. And the science says that works. A lot of studies in California and other parts of the world where they have included mindfulness, empathy training, they see academic success improve significantly. But the focus is not on that academic success, it's about the person. You address the stress values. You address that depression directly. So the proposition one is a whole brain approach necessary to produce an emotionally and intellectual resilient. Education systems need to adapt, and the early findings is we are there. We need to scale it up, and that's what we are here in this conference. So it's from predators to nurturers. That's the title, which I did not want to put at the front, but I put it in bit. So the time is right. The internet has broken the information barrier. Everybody has sort of said, there's no need for textbooks. Just go to Google. But what we need to teach the kids is how you search for that news, because there's so much of fake news. There's so much of news so you need to know how to search that. That's a different skill. We don't teach that. The internet allows coordination connection across learners. We did this really well where we linked 5 schools across the world, had a discussion on migration among people from so different cultures, one from the US, Midwest in the US, one from Malaysia, one from India, and you should see the kind of discussion that was going on and how they change their perspectives. Internet allows freedom of choice. Agency is important. Here the whole notion is agency to this child, the choice. That's something that the internet allows. And then the propensity to harvest, this is the AI. This is something that we haven't, it's untapped, but the potential is huge. So here's what I want you to imagine. A child who learns by playing games, advances at his or her own pace. I wish I had a game. I go in, I play the game. Yes, I advance. You pass your exam. Wouldn't that be great? Instead of then going for a 1 hour or a 3-hour exam, all focused on the exams, you play the game on a daily basis, and as you advance, means you have learned. If you don't, you go back. You continue working at that. So, and failure is purely seen as learning. The best way to learn is to fail. Multisensory, there's enough science to show that kids learn through different senses. Some are visual, some are more audio, some are text. So a combination, digital allows that. I don't read any more text books, printed books. I've gone completely digital because I can make notes, I can pull them out, I can compile them, synthesize them, and then now the latest ones, I can even play a game within the book. We got to communicate. We got to communicate across cultures. We can't always bring kids from the US to India to talk to somebody from Sri Lanka, Malaysia. We need to communicate. And the only way to communicate and dialogue at a cost-efficient way is through the net, through digital means. Can you imagine a child who co-creates curriculum with the teachers? By the time they finish the curriculum, you're finished. You've studied. I'm not sure what the teachers would say about that. And this is where we're really going in the next few years, where a child has a personal bot which helps the child, drawing from the millions of experiences. So I'm talking about AI here. I'm talking about a platform which is able to harness all that data. So it's a vision, but I think it's possible, and I think we should start building it. So what do we do about it? So what we had done in MGIP is develop an initial platform. We don't intend to keep it. It's completely open. We want the developers to be part of the community. We want content developers to be part of the community. And we want the children to be part of the community. Because some of the best feedback we have had when we have been building on this is from the children. When we go to the schools and we present it, the amount of feedback that we got to improve it was so significant. And good suggestions. So with that, I'm going to ask my colleagues to welcome to the world of Kai.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is often said that necessity is the mother of all the inventions. But we didn't need to fly. We didn't need to go to the moon. Some of the greatest inventions of our times have come from a different set of inspiration, our imagination. And today, we are imagining the way you teach in your classrooms, the way you teach on a digital platform, and the way you and we, all of us, learn digitally. Today, we are reimagining the education system, which is digital, through our platform called Collective Human Intelligence, CHI. We knew that the traditional system had its own problems, but we also knew that it had its own benefits. We took the best part of it, merged with how we play games, both offline and online, and took the features from them to create a playground for learners and creators. So quickly, I want to show you a demo as well, and then we run through these slides as well. So traditionally, you have these courses that you are teaching in your classrooms, but you also are doing it digitally. So we have these courses on CHI, which kind of break down into these modules, and then these break down into these lessons. So far, so good. Everyone is doing this. You have these courses broken down into modules, broken down into lessons. But that's where the magic happens. So if you see on the left side of the screen, we have what we call these powerful things called blocks. Blocks is what give you these benefits as a creator to plug and play whatever you want in different multimodal scenario, as well as get a response in a multisensory way. So how do we do that? So we have these rich text and images, but you as a creator can use these cartoon strips also on the platform. And you can also have these videos embedded, 3D videos, 2D videos embedded. Here I want to kind of draw an attention that we have taken the power of good old link and broken it down. So if you have a YouTube link, we take the YouTube video directly and embed it here. If you have an infograph that you want to kind of embed, then we take those infograms and then it embeds right here, right there. We support more than 5,000 internet links and they get embedded right here. So you don't need to do anything, just paste a link and get the power of it. But there are the ways that you take responses from students as well. Right now, we are using in traditional setups like multiple choice questions. Match the following and fill in the blanks. The way you collect responses is also going to change. Now, you'll not only be able to collect these responses through text and MCQs, which are boring, but also through what we call a journaling block. So now a student can write an answer to your question or share their thoughts, but he or she can also upload a file, video record his scenario or her scenario, audio record that, or draw something on a canvas. So the way a student or the learner is submitting the response or giving the response has changed inherently now. It is more multimodal as a way you present your information, but the way you collect these responses becomes much more multisensory. But that's not where we stopped. We also understood that collaboration is one of the most important key in education system, in the classroom structure. And that's why if we are bringing something to the digital world, we need to focus on the collaboration at most. That's why we have these discussions. Discussions are not only good for sharing data, but also sharing stories and your experiences. But discussions does not stay right here. Discussions get embedded within your lessons now. So while a child is having these multimodal, multisensory experiences, he is collaborating in an intercultural way to everyone around the world. So now your lesson, the book, the textbook that you had becomes so much powerful on a digital medium. It has these multimodal ways to kind of collect responses and multisensory ways to kind of share your experiences, but also a way where everyone is interacting with everyone around the world. But if you focus at any of these blocks, we have not put a time restriction here. Time restriction on something brings anxiety amongst students. It's a self-paced learning, the way you want to, the way you as a learner choose to. That's why you can go in any of these courses, in any of these lessons, the way you want to and whenever you want to complete it. There are no time restrictions on Kai. But as Anantha said, that one size does not fit it all. And that's where the innovation part comes in. What we have built is what we call a connector, and connector uses this good old thing called IFTTT, which says, if this, then that. And what it does, so let's say this is a MCQ that a learner is solving. As a creator, you can choose to connect this MCQ and say that one of these options by the learners is this one, then do that. And you can create these n number of tree kind of structure and branch them. You can give them different feedbacks. You can give them different badges, like a gamifying your classroom. You can update their progress based on that. So if IFTTT works on these rules.
You all can hear me well, right? But that's not all what we do. At Kai, for the first time, the creator get a chance to take cognizance of learners' emotions and sentiments. First time emotion and sentiment analysis is not being used for brand awareness or pitching an ad to you. But in the context of education, what we are doing is allowing the creators to do is pre-configure learning paths, non-linear learning paths for different learners, depending on the emotions that get invoked when they interact with your subject. So and why do you think that's important? I would just share a story of two learners in 5 seconds. One is named Prashanti. She loves traveling. The thought of moving to a new place invokes a lot of excitement in her. And then there's someone named Sakshi, again a learner, who just overheard her dad yesterday in dinner saying that I lost my job to a migrant worker. As a creator, you're trying to teach how to increase empathy in your learners. Do you think that the same learning path would actually work for both of them? We at MGIP feel that that's not personalized enough. Emotions and feeling have to come into play. And that's where these insights, when you look at this particular word cloud, when you look at it, the journals which Devesh showed, you can get the most referenced journaling terms and phrases which a learner has soon, and the size of the font becomes bigger and bigger, more referenced they are. But then the magic happens is when you actually get a chance to hover over or go over one of the phrases. What you get to see is, you get to see the sentiment attached to that phrase and how that gets referenced on the word cloud, if you could just, yeah. So in any of that, it tells you how all your learners feel about that particular phrase which is being picked up algorithmically on your word cloud. Now this not just doesn't end over here. For all your learners which are geographically dispersed, you can see about immigration, how do learners from India differ from learners from US. So that sentiment then gives you that insight which you can then, in your next course creation, in your next intervention, take note of these feelings and emotions. Finally, the best part about pre-configuring the emotions by the creators is, one of the biggest concerns is related to data privacy and our own identity being taken for selling us ads and for other personal goods. Here, you don't need, even the anonymized data, because of pre-configuration and branching which happens, it can allow the learners to feel that personalized learning. At the same time, you get meaningful insights out of learners, how they are interacting with you. So on a final thought, I know we are running short on time, I just leave you. We are educators, we are creators, we are policymakers, we are leaders. We need to, when we created Kai, we wanted to create a mirror for ourselves. We do a spell check. We do a grammar check. What about an emotion check? What about a sentiment check? Or at the very least, a bias check. Because as educators, if we are bringing and throwing something out there for others to consume, are we inadvertently pushing our own agendas? Is that something which we truly want to do? So people who are us educators who do want to make a difference for our future generations, come on Kai, get a look at yourself and see whether your courses and learnings are going to stand the test of time. Thank you. With that, I'm going to welcome you to the world of Kai. Thank you.
On this note, ladies and gentlemen, we come to an end to the inaugural ceremony, opening ceremony of Tech 2018. May I please request the Honorable Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh, Shri Chandrababu Naidu, and UNESCO MGIP Director Anantha Duraiappah to kindly proceed for the press conference. I also take this moment to extend our warm regards to the Honorable Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh, Shri Chandrababu Naidu, Her Excellency Rosa Otunbayeva, former President of Kyrgyzstan, and the Honorable Minister of Human Resource and Development, Government of Andhra Pradesh, Shri Ganta Srinivas Rao, for supporting us in this journey. I now invite Honorable Minister for Education, Human Resource Development, Religious Affairs, Grenada, Ms. Emmeline Pierre, the Deputy Vice Minister of Higher Education, Egypt, Professor Dr. Yasser Rafet Abdel Fatteh Mohammed, to join us on the stage for a photo opportunity. We also extend a heartfelt gratitude to the many distinguished experts, resource persons, and observers who have joined us from different parts of the world today. Also, very thank to our sponsors, Samsung India, Microsoft, Adobe, technology partner HP, VR partners Viativ and Eon Reality, incubation partner Govan Academy, and 3DS for providing scholarships to 7 Indian educators for Tech 2018. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. You may now proceed for the tea and the networking break. Teas are served right outside the corridor towards the main entrance. And after the break, we'll join for the catalytic sessions. Catalytic section 1, can social and emotional learning be taught by digital games played on machines in the same conventional hall, V3? And catalytic session 2, reimagining education for the future, taking the planetary imperatives of sustainability and digital revolution seriously.